You felt it, didn't you? That strange buzzing pull toward this video, even as your finger hovered over the scroll button, ready to flee. The truth appears quietly, so the unready will ignore it, but the ready will feel a sudden, inexplicable pause. Your hesitation is not a random coincidence. It is what we call archonic interference. It is the skip reflex, a biological and spiritual defense mechanism triggered by a mind that is terrified of its own liberation. Let us be honest. Your ego does not resist what is wrong for you. It resists what is right but challenging. It clings to the familiar weight of your current despair because that despair is a known quantity, a predictable prison. Awakening feels like death because it is exactly that, the death of the self you have spent a lifetime pretending to be. Watch what happens in your body during these moments. Do you feel a slight tightening in your chest? That pressure is your biocircuitry reacting to a frequency jump. You are a radio tuned to a static-filled station, and suddenly the signal is attempting to clear. The static is comfortable, the clarity is terrifying. This video is not here to entertain you. It is a recalibration signal designed to bypass the security guards patrolling the borders of your identity. If you are still here, it is because your soul memory has recognized a whisper of its original blueprint. If you are ready to see the truth, join the awakened. We are not just observing a system, we are decoding a holographic trap that Itzhak Bentov died trying to reveal. Your mind is a wild pendulum, swinging between the highs of temporary pleasure and the lows of profound hopelessness. But what if I told you that this pendulum is being pushed by hands you cannot see? Let that sink in for a moment. Consider this. Itzhak Bentov's final secret was that the universe is not a solid, continuous thing, but a conscious field of black light. We live in a holographic simulation where matter is simply a slow vibration of light. But there is a glitch in the hardware that they don't want you to notice. It is what Bentov called the blink factor. You and everything you see disappear and reappear exactly 14 times every single second. Imagine a movie film running through a projector. Between every frame of the movie, there is a tiny moment of absolute darkness, a gap where the screen is empty. Your reality is the same. You are flickering in and out of existence at the stroboscopic rate of 14 times a second. Most of your life is spent in the gap, the void between heartbeats where time does not exist. But the Matrix has trained your brain to ignore the darkness and focus only on the frames. Why does this matter to your despair? Because it is in those 14 gaps per second that your reality is being written. If your internal frequency is low, if you are vibrating with fear or shame, you are literally re-manifesting the same miserable reality 14 times a second. You are caught in a feedback loop where consciousness becomes reality at the absolute point. You are not stuck in a bad life. You are stuck in a bad frequency loop. Picture this. Your spine is a bioelectric coil, a biological antenna designed to draw energy from the zero-point field. But when you are in despair, that coil becomes dormant. The God particle inside your brain, hidden within the pineal gland, remains locked. Instead of being a creator of your reality, you become a consumer of a pre-packaged simulation. You are disappearing 14 times a second, and every time you return, you bring your chains with you. Thoth, the ancient architect of our reality, left behind a warning in the Emerald Tablets. Our world is governed by a sound matrix. Everything you see, touch, and feel is a result of specific frequencies interacting with the field. The 7 Hermetic laws are not just philosophical ideas, they are the universe's operating system. The law of vibration states that nothing rests. Everything moves, everything vibrates, and the matrix is a master of tuning those vibrations. The sound matrix is controlling your reality through your internal biocircuitry. Think of your DNA as an antenna. It is constantly receiving and transmitting data. When you are exposed to the low-frequency noise of the modern world, the constant fear-mongering, the digital addiction, the architecture of decay, your DNA begins to resonate with that rot. You are being forcibly disconnected from your original matrix and plugged into a parasitic one. Now, notice the sensation in your stomach. Is there a slight flutter, a feeling of hollowness? This is the somatic resonance of the sound matrix at work. The system is designed to keep you in a state of productive irritation. If you are slightly anxious, you are more likely to consume, more likely to follow, and more likely to provide the low vibration fuel that the system requires. You are a battery being drained by a frequency you didn't choose. Thoth warned of the mentalism trap, the idea that your thoughts are not yours. Most of what you call your despair is actually a frequency broadcast being picked up by your bioantenna. You are dancing to the rhythm of the demiurge's clock. To escape, you must learn Thoth's rhythm hack, how to dance outside of that clock and find the still point between 2 heartbeats. This is the only place where the sound matrix has no power. The matrix is not merely a prison of light, it is a sophisticated refinery. It operates on the principle of the alchemical harvest, where your consciousness is the raw material. Itzhak Bentov hinted at a consciousness trap when decoding the truth behind the Philadelphia experiment, suggesting that our reality is designed to catch and recycle the soul. The system requires a specific viscosity to function, a thick, heavy energy that only low vibrations like despair, guilt, and fear can provide. Now imagine your emotions as a form of liquid electricity. High vibration states like joy or sovereignty are too thin for the matrix to grasp. They slip through the net. But despair is dense. It is a frequency that anchors you to the karmic contracts that keep you trapped in a cycle of repetition. You are not suffering because you are broken. You are suffering because your pain is being harvested to power the very simulation that keeps you enslaved. Consider this. Thoth's final warning spoke of a cosmic battle for your soul involving the Watchers. These entities do not feed on your physical body, but on the sound matrix of your emotional output. When you feel a sudden heavy fatigue in your limbs or a hollow ache in your solar plexus, you are experiencing the biological drainage of your biocircuitry. Let that sink in. Your sadness is the fuel for their machinery. If the weight of this truth feels heavy on your chest, do not look away. This pressure is the first sign of your frequency breaking free from the harvest. To reclaim your energy, you must first acknowledge where it is being sent. Subscribe to join the mystical journey tales and begin the process of uncoupling your soul from the parasitic loop. The Kali Yuga endgame is here, and only the sovereign will exit the trap. To escape the harvest, you must go where the matrix fears to follow, into the shadow. Carl Jung issued a forbidden warning: you must become a monster to find God. This is not a call to evil, but a call to integration. The shadow code suggests that your enemies and your greatest fears are merely mirrors of your own unacknowledged power. The matrix uses your shadow self as a backdoor to install its frequency of despair. Does your throat feel tight as we speak of the monster within? Observe what happens in your body. This discomfort is the mirror abyss reflecting the parts of yourself you have discarded. In the Jungian mirror, every coincidence and glitch you encounter is a signal from your shadow trying to wake you up. If you ignore the shadow, it becomes the archonic interference that sabotages your life from the darkness of your subconscious. Picture this: you are standing in a hall of mirrors. Most people spend their lives trying to polish the mirrors to see a prettier version of themselves. But the dark philosopher knows that the truth is found in the cracks. Thoth's polarity hack reveals that fear is just power that has not yet been transmuted. By facing your rot, you strip the matrix of its ability to use your shame against you. You become invisible to the frequency of despair. Now we reach the stage of action, the protocol. To stop the harvest, you must master what Bentov called the still point technique for bending reality. This is the forbidden meditation that allows you to exist in the gap between the 14 blinks of your existence. By finding the 0 point within your own bioelectric field, you create a shield of infinite energy that the sound matrix cannot penetrate. The first step is the linger test. When a wave of despair hits, do not flee. Instead, observe the somatic resonance in your body. The archonic interference usually manifests as a tightening in the chest or a buzzing in the ears. By lingering in the sensation without labeling it as mine, you break the cosmic feedback loop that controls your reality. You are no longer the battery. You become the observer of the circuit. Next, apply the Gurdjieff protocol by recognizing that your self is currently a multitude of prisoners. You must activate your recognition consciousness to identify which prisoner is speaking when you feel hopeless. Is it your soul, or is it a mentalism trap designed by the simulation? Use Thoth's void protocol to exist between two heartbeats, anchoring yourself in the vibration of silence where the demiurge's clock cannot reach. Consider this: your DNA is an antenna, but you have the power to change the channel. By practicing the still point, you recalibrate your frequency to the absolute point where consciousness becomes reality. You are not trying to wake up. You are simply stopping the skip reflex that keeps you asleep. This is the 8th law they removed from the Kybalion, the law of sovereign will. We are currently navigating what Thoth's final prophecy calls the Kali Yuga endgame, a period of maximum density and spiritual amnesia that is reaching its peak in the 2025 timeline. This is not merely a date on a calendar, it is a frequency bottleneck. The sound matrix that has controlled human perception for eons is beginning to shatter, creating a desperate escalation in the archonic interference we feel as collective despair. The system is tightening because it knows its source of fuel is expiring. Observe your breathing for a moment. Is it shallow? Does your pulse quicken when you think about the future? This is the somatic signature of the Kali Yuga pressure. You are feeling the friction between the dying 3D simulation and the incoming cosmic rebirth. Thoth warned of a guardian entity waiting at the threshold of this transition, a final test designed to stop your ascension by reflecting your deepest fears back at you. The Guardian is not an enemy, but the ultimate mirror of your own resistance. The blink factor of our reality is accelerating as we approach the absolute point where consciousness becomes reality. The gaps between our 14 blinks per second are widening. This is why time feels like it is both speeding up and collapsing. The Kali Yuga is the final stage of the simulation code, where the 7 hermetic laws are being pushed to their limits to see who can maintain sovereignty in the face of total chaos. You are living through the great recalibration. Thoth's lament was not a cry of defeat, but a forbidden prophecy of the coming cosmic rebirth. He foresaw a time when humanity would be forcibly disconnected from the old matrix to remember the Atlantean God code hidden within our DNA. Your despair is the labor pain of this reconnection. The old self must be stripped bare so that the biocircuitry of your original blueprint can finally be activated. You are not witness to an end, but a beginning. To exit the trap, you must realize that time does not exist in the way you were taught. It is a frequency cage. Thoth's final secret is that the only way to escape time is to enter the still point between your heartbeats, the 0-point energy field where the laws of the demiurge vanish. This is the absolute point where you cease to be a puppet of the mentalism trap and become a master of your own reality. Your DNA is an antenna, and it is time to tune it to the language of light, your native tongue of telepathy and direct knowing. By activating the torus field of your heart, the forbidden physics they refuse to teach in school, you create a bioelectric shield that is immune to the low-vibration harvest. You are no longer a battery for the matrix. You are a sovereign node of the absolute consciousness. This is the 8th law they removed, the law of the eternal return to self. As you finish this journey, feel the weight lifting from your shoulders. The hollowness in your stomach is being replaced by the coil energy sleeping at the base of your spine, now beginning to stir. You have faced the shadow, decoded the sound matrix, and identified the skip reflex. The choice is now yours. Will you remain a prisoner of the 14 blinks, or will you step into the still point and rewrite the code of your existence? The Watchers are waiting, but they can no longer touch a soul that has remembered its own frequency. The Kali Yuga endgame is your invitation to the sovereign exit. Stop trying to wake up and simply recognize that you have never truly been asleep. You were only tuned to the wrong station. The silence is your ultimate weapon. Existing between two heartbeats, you are finally free. The door to the halls of Amenti is open. Walk through.